I'm a 28-year-old guy living with my mom, 52F, and younger sister, 24F. Our dad passed away when I was 18 and my sister was 14. Since then, it's been just the three of us in the house. Growing up, I always felt like my mom favored my sister. It started small. My sister would get new clothes while I got hand-me-downs from cousins. As we got older, the differences became more noticeable. When I made the honor roll in 8th grade, my mom said, "Good job," and went back to watching TV. When my sister made honor roll 2 years later, Mom threw a party and invited the whole family. I remember one summer when I was 15, I wanted to go to a science camp. It cost $500, which was a lot for our family. I worked odd jobs all spring to save up, but I was still short. When I asked Mom if she could help with the rest, she said we couldn't afford it. 2 weeks later, she bought my sister a $600 phone because all her friends had one. Don't get me wrong, my mom wasn't cruel or abusive. She just didn't seem to see me sometimes. My sister was loud and demanding, always needing attention. I was quieter, more independent. I think Mom found it easier to focus on my sister's needs and assume I was fine. When it came to chores, the inequality was clear. By the time I was 16, my weekly chore list included mowing the lawn, taking out trash, doing dishes, vacuuming the house, and cleaning the bathroom. My sister's only chore was to keep her room tidy, which she rarely did, and Mom never enforced it. I tried not to let it bother me too much. I told myself that maybe my sister needed more support, or that Mom was just closer to her daughter. But it hurt, especially after Dad died. I felt like I'd lost both parents in a way. My relationship with my dad had been complicated. He worked long hours and traveled a lot for business, so he wasn't around much when we were young. When he was home, he tried to connect with me through sports, but I was more into computers and science. I think he was disappointed that I wasn't the athletic son he'd hoped for. As I got older, Dad and I found some common ground through our shared love of classic rock. We'd listen to his old vinyl records together, and he'd tell me stories about concerts he'd been to in his youth. Those moments were rare, but precious. When Dad got sick, it happened fast. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. He was gone within months of the diagnosis. I was just starting my senior year of high school. Mom fell apart, and suddenly I had to be the man of the house. I got a part-time job to help with bills, started driving my sister to her activities, and tried to keep the household running. My grades slipped that year. I had been hoping for scholarships, but with everything going on, I barely managed to graduate. My dream of going away to college died quietly. Instead, I enrolled in community college and kept working. My sister, on the other hand, seemed to flourish after Dad's death. Mom poured all her energy into making sure my sister had everything she needed and more. When it came time for college, Mom took out loans to send my sister to an expensive out-of-state university. Meanwhile, I was still living at home, working full-time at a grocery store and taking night classes. I don't want to sound bitter. I love my sister and I'm glad she got opportunities. But it was hard not to feel resentful sometimes. My grandfather on my dad's side passed away last year. We weren't close. After Dad died, that side of the family kind of drifted away. I saw him maybe once a year at most. That's why I was shocked when we found out he'd left a sizable inheritance to be split equally between me and my sister. It wasn't millions or anything, but enough to make a real difference, about $100,000 each. For the first time in my life, I saw a chance to get ahead, to pursue my dreams instead of just scraping by. I had been working as an assistant manager at the grocery store, but I'd always dreamed of opening my own cafe. I love coffee, and over the years I'd taught myself a lot about different roasts and brewing methods. I even took a barista class at a local coffee shop. The inheritance could finally make that dream possible. My sister, on the other hand, immediately started spending. She'd graduated college the year before and was working as a social media manager for a small local business. The job didn't pay great, but Mom was still supporting her, so all her money was fun money. Within weeks of getting the inheritance, my sister bought a brand new car. Not just a reliable used car, but a flashy sports car that cost nearly $50,000. Then came the designer clothes, the latest iPhone, and a lavish vacation to Europe with her friends. Within 6 months, she had less than $20,000 left. That's when the drama started. My mom pulled me aside one day and started talking about how my sister was struggling financially. She went on about how my sister needed to pay off her student loans and couldn't afford rent in the city where she wanted to move for a new job opportunity. Then she dropped the bomb. She wanted me to give my sister the bulk of my inheritance. I was stunned. I told her absolutely not. This was my chance to finally get ahead in life and pursue my dreams. My mom got angry, saying I was being selfish and that family should help family. She guilt-tripped me, bringing up all the times my sister had been there for me, which honestly, I couldn't recall many instances of. The argument escalated. My mom said if I couldn't do this one thing for my sister, then maybe I should move out and stop mooching off her. I reminded her that I paid rent and contributed to household expenses, unlike my sister who lived there for free when she wasn't at college. My mom brushed that off, saying my sister needed more support right now. Word spread to the rest of the family. My aunts and uncles from my mom's side started calling and texting, telling me I was being cruel to my poor little sister. My cousins posted vague statements on social media about greedy people that were clearly aimed at me. It felt like everyone was ganging up on me. The only person who took my side was my grandmother, my mom's mom. She called me privately and said she understood why I wanted to keep my inheritance. She revealed that my grandfather had actually considered leaving everything to my sister, but she had convinced him to split it equally. She thought it was important for me to have a fair shot at building my own life. Now the house is tense. My mom barely speaks to me, except to make snide comments. My sister alternates between crying about how unfair life is and making passive-aggressive remarks about selfish people. I'm seriously considering moving out, but rent in our area is insane, and it would eat up a big portion of my inheritance. I feel like I'm going crazy. Am I really the asshole for wanting to keep the money my grandfather left me? Should I just give in to keep the peace? I'm torn between standing my ground and feeling guilty for causing all this family drama. Edit. Thank you all for the responses. To answer some common questions, my sister's degree is in communications. She currently works as a social media manager for a small local business, but wants to move to a bigger city for better opportunities. I've been living at home to save money while working and taking night classes in business management. The plan was always to move out once I finished my degree. My mom has always been a bit of a pushover with my sister. Even when we were kids, my sister would throw tantrums until she got her way. I think my mom just found it easier to give in than to deal with the drama. As for why I've stayed living at home this long, it's a combination of high cost of living in our area, wanting to help my mom after dad passed, and trying to save up to start my business. I do pay rent and contribute to bills. Update. It's been a few weeks since my original post, and a lot has happened. First, I want to thank everyone for their advice and support. It really helped me feel less crazy and more confident in my decision. Taking the advice of many commenters, I decided to move out. Finding an affordable place wasn't easy. Our area has become increasingly expensive over the years, with lots of tech companies moving in and driving up prices. I spent days scouring online listings and driving around looking for rent signs. I finally found a small studio apartment in an older building. It's not great. The appliances are ancient. The carpet has seen better days, and I'm pretty sure I can hear my neighbor's every move through the thin walls. But it's all mine, and that feels pretty amazing. Moving out was interesting, to say the least. When I told my mom I was leaving, her reaction was a mix of anger and disbelief. She couldn't seem to decide if she was upset I was going or glad to be rid of me. She kept saying things like, "I can't believe you're abandoning the family like this," followed immediately by, "Well, I hope you're happy on your own." My sister's reaction was even more extreme. She spent most of the time I was packing sulking in her room. When she did emerge, it was to ask if she could have my TV since I clearly don't care about the family anyway. I told her no, and she stormed off, slamming her door so hard a picture fell off the wall. The day I moved, my mom made one last attempt to get me to change my mind about the inheritance. She brought up every possible guilt trip, how she sacrificed everything for us after Dad died, how family should stick together, how my sister has always looked up to me, news to me. When none of that worked, she switched to threats, saying I'd regret this decision and that I shouldn't come crawling back when I fail. It was my grandmother who came to help me move. She showed up early in the morning with coffee and donuts, ready to work. She didn't say much while my mom was ranting, but I could see the disappointment in her eyes. Disappointment in my mom, not me. Once we were alone, loading up her old station wagon with my belongings, my grandmother opened up. She told me how proud she was of me for standing up for myself. Then she shared some family history I never knew. Apparently, my mom had pulled similar stunts with her siblings over the years, always favoring whoever was the neediest at the time. There was the time she convinced my grandfather to co-sign a loan for my aunt, who then defaulted, nearly bankrupting my grandparents. Or the time she gave my uncle money that was supposed to be for my grandmother's medical bills because he was going through a rough patch. It was eye-opening and made me feel less guilty about my decision. I asked my grandmother why she never said anything before. She sighed and said she'd tried many times, but my mom always dismissed her concerns. Sometimes, she said, people have to learn their own lessons. The first week in my new place was tough. The silence was deafening after years of living in a house with other people. I was lonely and second-guessing myself. Had I made a huge mistake? Should I have just given in to keep the peace? Then my sister called. For a moment, I felt hopeful. Maybe she was reaching out to reconcile. But no. She wanted to know if I'd co-sign on a lease for her in the city, since her credit wasn't great. When I said no, she exploded, calling me every name in the book and saying I was dead to her. I hung up and blocked her number. That call, as hurtful as it was, helped solidify my resolve. I realized I'd made the right choice. For the first time in my life, I was putting myself first, and while it was scary, it was also liberating. On the bright side, I've been making progress with my business plan. I've been researching local coffee shops, studying their menus and prices, trying to figure out what niche I could fill. I found a small space that would be perfect for my cafe, and I'm in talks with the owner about leasing it. It needs a lot of work, but I'm excited about the potential. I've also connected with a few local artists about displaying their work in the cafe. There's a community college nearby with a good art program, and I thought it could be cool to have a rotating display of student work. It would give the students exposure and provide ever-changing decor for the cafe. My mom's side of the family is still giving me the cold shoulder. I get the occasional text from a cousin asking if I've come to my senses yet, but mostly it's radio silence. It hurts, but I'm trying to focus on the future rather than dwell on their disapproval. Surprisingly, my dad's family has started reaching out more. My aunt, Dad's sister, invited me over for dinner last week. We had a great talk. She said she always felt bad for how my mom treated me and wished she'd done more when I was younger. It's nice to feel like I have some family in my corner. I'm still figuring things out, but I feel more at peace with my decision. Yes, it's been hard and lonely at times, but it also feels like I'm finally living my own life instead of being a supporting character in my sister's story. I'm nervous about the future, but for the first time in a long time, I'm also excited. Update 2. It's been about 3 months since my last update, and life has taken some unexpected turns. First, the good news. My cafe is officially open. It's been a wild ride getting everything set up, but seeing my dream become reality is amazing. The space needed more work than I initially thought. There were plumbing issues, electrical problems, and don't even get me started on the health department requirements. But step by step, it all came together. I went with a cozy, slightly quirky vibe for the decor. Mismatched vintage furniture, local art on the walls, and plants everywhere. The menu is small, but focused. Really good coffee. I splurged on a top-of-the-line espresso machine, fresh pastries from a local bakery, and a few simple breakfast and lunch items. The first few weeks were slow, but word is starting to spread, and we're building a loyal customer base. There's a group of writers who come in every morning and stay for hours. A book club has started meeting here once a month. It's becoming exactly the kind of community spot I'd hoped for. I'm working insane hours and I'm exhausted, but it's a good kind of tired. Every night when I lock up, I look around and feel a sense of pride. This is mine. I built this. Now for the family drama. About a month ago, my sister showed up at my apartment unannounced. It was late, nearly midnight, and I was just getting home from the cafe. She was a mess, crying, mascara running down her face, clothes rumpled like she'd been sleeping in them. Turns out she'd lost her job. The company she worked for had gone through a round of layoffs, and as one of the newest employees, she was one of the first to go. She couldn't afford her rent in the city anymore. She begged me to let her move in with me, just until she got back on her feet. I said no. It was hard. Seeing her cry brought back memories of, when we were kids, of me always trying to protect her and make her smile. But I knew if I let her in, I'd never get her out. My tiny studio was barely big enough for me, let alone 2 people. And I knew from experience that my sister's temporary situations had a way of becoming permanent. She didn't take it well. She screamed at me, saying I was heartless and that she'd always known I hated her. Then she threatened to tell everyone that I'd abused her as a kid if I didn't help her. I was shocked. Nothing like that had ever happened. We'd had normal sibling squabbles, sure, but abuse, never. I told her to leave or I'd call the police. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard I thought it would break. I spent the rest of the night unable to sleep, replaying the conversation in my head and wondering if I'd done the right thing. The next day, my phone blew up with messages from family members. Apparently, my sister had gone to my mom and spun some story about how I'd physically threatened her when she asked for help. My mom, of course, believed her without question. I tried to explain what really happened, but no one wanted to hear it. I was reeling from all this when my grandmother called. She'd heard both sides of the story and said she believed me. She also dropped a bombshell. She was changing her will. Originally, she'd planned to leave everything to my mom, assuming it would be divided fairly between me and my sister. Now, she's leaving a significant portion directly to me. She said she couldn't trust my mom to be fair. When my mom found out about the will change, she lost it. She left me a voicemail full of curses and threats, saying I'd manipulated my grandmother and turned her against the family. She said as far as she was concerned, she only had one child now. It hurts, I won't lie. Despite everything, they're still my family. There's a part of me that wishes we could go back to when we were kids, before all this drama and resentment built up. But I also know that's not possible. We can't go back, we can only go forward. The cafe is keeping me busy, which helps. I'm making new friends with other small business owners in the area. There's a real sense of community among us. We share advice, vent about difficult customers, and even help each other out when someone's short-staffed. One of them, a guy named Mike who owns a bookstore down the street, has been especially supportive. He's been in business for about 5 years and has become a kind of mentor to me. We've been hanging out outside of work too, grabbing beers after closing, or watching games together on slow Sunday afternoons. There might be something there, but I'm taking it slow. After all the family drama, it's nice to just have an uncomplicated friendship. Last week I ran into my sister at the grocery store. It was awkward, to say the least. She looked terrible, tired and stressed. Part of me wanted to reach out, to try and mend things. But then I remembered her threats and accusations, and I just couldn't. We made eye contact, and for a moment I thought she might say something. Instead, she turned and walked away. I stood there for a while, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. My mom hasn't tried to contact me since that angry voicemail. I've thought about reaching out, but every time I pick up the phone, I just don't know what to say. How do you start a conversation with someone who's declared you dead to them? So for now, we're at an impasse. On a brighter note, the cafe is starting to turn a profit. It's small, but it's there. I've been able to hire 2 part-time employees, which has taken some of the pressure off me. I'm even starting to think about expanding the menu, maybe adding some simple dinner options for the evening crowd. My grandmother comes by the cafe at least once a week. She always orders a cappuccino and a slice of lemon cake and sits for hours reading or chatting with other customers. She's become something of a fixture, and customers love her. It's nice to have her support, both emotionally and literally as a loyal customer. I know this isn't the happy family reconciliation some people might have hoped for. The reality is messier and more complicated. There are days when I miss my family terribly, when I wonder if I made the right choices. But then, I look at what I've built, at the life I'm creating for myself, and I know I'm on the right path. I feel like I'm finally building a life that's truly mine, surrounded by people who value me for who I am. It's not perfect, but it's real, and that's worth something. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe someday my mom and sister will come around, or maybe this rift is permanent. Either way, I'm learning to be okay with uncertainty and to focus on the things I can control. For now, I'm taking it one day at a time. I'm pouring my energy into my cafe, into building new relationships, and into becoming the person I want to be, not the person my family expected me to be. It's a work in progress, but aren't we all?